Behind every successful empire lies a city. The British had London, the Romans had Rome, and the Vikings used Copenhagen and Denmark as their outpost. For the Portuguese, it was Lisbon. In our interconnected modern world, Lisbon remains one of Europe's financial centers and container ports. In the 1400s, however, Lisbon meant more to the Portuguese Empire. In this video, I'm going to explore just how crucial Lisbon was and also how Portugal's strategic location led to them having the biggest maritime empire in the 14 and 1500s. The location of the port city of Lisbon and its harbor was perhaps Portugal's biggest geographical advantage. Located on the westernmost region of the Iberian Peninsula at a natural harbor where the Tagus River met with the Atlantic Ocean, this is where the Atlantic economy and the Mediterranean economy overlapped. It became a hub for trade and the exchange of ideas about seamanship. This brought in skilled seamen who helped the Portuguese become so successful in maritime exploration. Also, it was from Lisbon where Portugal first began colonizing Atlantic islands such as the Azores in the 1430s. Lisbon's geographical location as the bridge between the Atlantic and Mediterranean was a huge advantage for the Portuguese expansion. In 1415, the Portuguese colonized the northern region of Morocco, making their first steps into Africa. This early colonization of small areas gave Portugal different styles of empire building. Portugal's geographical ideas and also their empire was built on knowing about trade routes between Europe and Asia and their location at the end of the Mediterranean. Although they were the westernmost empire in Europe, their objective to reach the Holy Land and the discovery of gold in Morocco drew them towards Africa rather than across the Atlantic. By 1434, the Portuguese had pushed south past Cape Bojador in the western Saharan. By the 1460s, Portugal had pushed even farther south around Africa in search of trade route to India. But for that to happen, more would need to go right for Portugal. And go right things did when Portugal discovered the West African gold trade. By the 1470s, the Portuguese diverted some of this gold trade to their Atlantic Sea route. By 1482, the Portuguese took a crucial step forward. They constructed the fort of San Jorge da Mina for gold trade. It was a fortified compound where foreign merchants both lived and traded. The profits from the fort were huge and nearly doubled Portugal's revenue by the 1500s. This massive revenue stream supplied Portugal's expensive journey south and around the Cape of Good Hope around Africa. The second important thing that went right for Portugal was the lack of local resistance in the waters around Africa. No one had bothered to venture south down the West African coast since there was nothing but desert. With little human opposition, the Portuguese continued south down the coast to the Cape of Good Hope, then headed north on the eastern coast of Africa until they reached the southernmost point of the Indo-African trade route. From here, the Portuguese, under Vasco da Gama, with the help of local knowledge, sailed north to India. When they reached Calicut on India's Malabar coast, they re-established contact with Europe through the Middle Eastern trade routes. Vasco da Gama had found a route connecting Portugal to India, and it all started from the harbor at Lisbon. However, the Portuguese didn't quite have an idea what to do with their newly discovered trade route. The Malabar coast seemed like a perfect place to set up a colony due to its reliance on trade. And so, 4 years after Vasco da Gama's exploration, the Portuguese arrived on the Malabar coast with a heavily armed fleet. They created a network of fortified bases to control maritime trade around India, and so they created the Estado. Portugal created the Estado, a maritime empire that was initially created for Portugal to gain a monopoly on the pepper trade. Instead, it became a system to gain protection money from maritime traders. Let me explain. Basically, Asian traders had to buy a pass from Portugal to ensure safe travel in the Indian Ocean. Because of a lack of opposition in the Indian Ocean, the Estado was able to maintain control fairly easily. In East Asia, however, the Portuguese had to take a different approach. They became a middleman for communication and trade between the Ming Dynasty and Japan. Because of this, the purpose of the Estado switched from pirating to a connection of Portuguese communities across Asia. The Portuguese expert seamanship and boldness to venture created a connection of Portuguese settlements across Asia and Africa. But this was all made possible by another huge geographical advantage for Portugal, the location of Lisbon on the edge of the Iberian Peninsula. Lisbon's lucky location as the bridge between the Atlantic and the Mediterranean and the economies that followed. Their strategic position allowed the Portuguese to explore islands and the African coast, which eventually led them to creating a network of communities in Asia. If you made it this far, I appreciate you watching and I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe to see more content like this. Thank you.